Hi all, hope you're all doing well this week. I just wanted to do the norm, go over a little bit from last week, a little bit from this week, and then talk about the quiz a little bit as well. So last week we were discussing ethics as it pertains to administration. So things like relationships with staff, our patients and families, our external stakeholders, those types of things. And so we had our discussion about Gary and what was going on with regard to kind of getting some external education that was sponsored by a company, etc. So we had that, and we also had an individual case study that you had done last week, and then our quiz, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes. I'm going to hop into week 4 and review that quick as well. So this week to come, this week 4 of the class, I can't believe we're in week 4 already. It seems like the term just started and now we're halfway through. The summer will be done before we know it. So this week we're going to kind of stay in the vein of administration, but we're going to talk about marketing, a little bit about managed care, but then also about social responsibility and resource allocation. So I think that if nothing else, we've found through the process of initially the pandemic and PPE and the need for ventilators and those types of things, and then continuing to move forward into access to vaccines, and not just here in the US, but worldwide access to vaccines, those types of things. We're really seeing ethical issues in resource allocation. I happen to see, I spend a fair amount of time on Twitter. That's my main social media outlet, when I'm not working, and happened to see someone post the other day about it was a journalist that was here in the US that got a vaccine while she was here, and I think she was perhaps from Australia or somewhere, ended up getting a vaccine while she was here, and discussing how they just weren't available in her country, and how so many are going to waste here. I happen to live in a state that I live in Florida, as you guys know, one of the lowest overall vaccine rates as compared to states like New York, and I would assume probably Pennsylvania falls into this, getting into the 50, 60, 70% vaccinated. Down here, last I saw, we were 40% had their first vaccine, only around 25% had both vaccines, if assuming it was a Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, and it's certainly not a lack of availability because they're actually shutting down vaccine clinics down here because nobody's coming. So it's really getting a vaccine and wearing a mask has become so politicized, and I happen to live in the deep South, so it's it's very politicized here in one direction, whereas in states like New York, where I came from, it's very politicized in the other direction. So it's crazy that we will consider the ethical pieces to this, but it's hard to not consider the political aspect of it as well, and the ethics related to that. Ethics related to politics and healthcare, and all of that. It's kind of crazy to think about. So that's our discussion this week, is with regard to the pandemic and various types of resource allocation issues that have occurred, starting way back from the beginning and then up through today. So think about something that you read about or that you experienced personally, and talk about it and share your thoughts on, from an ethical perspective, what are your thoughts and how might we be able to overcome that in the future. If hopefully we'll never have this happen again, but that it's certainly a possibility. So then we also have a case study, Theranos. I find the subject of Theranos and their founder a fascinating case study, and there's actually an entire documentary, I think it's on Netflix, on Theranos. I'd highly recommend watching it if you are interested in the case. But so we're going to talk a little bit about that. This week also, I want you to submit your topic choice for your final project. So your final project is to write a manuscript, because, like, lack of a better term, but I want you to think of a specific ethical dilemma in healthcare administration. I want you to choose a position to defend. So obviously, whichever position you identify with, and then I want you to defend your position using reasoned arguments, ethical theories, facts, maybe case examples from other case studies, etc. But then I want you to look, and I had talked about this, I think, in the first Ed Puzzle. I want you to look at the other side of the coin. So be a devil's advocate. Look at the other side. Look at opposing commentary in various articles, other case studies, etc. And then talk about how based on those positions, how can we resolve it? Probably in the realm of what you have interest in, but also perhaps on the other side. Maybe it makes sense to provide a resolution for the devil's advocate side as well. And then talk about the implications for that in healthcare policy or in administrative practice or in whatever field that you're specifically interested in. So really kind of a comprehensive examination of an issue, solution to the issue, and both sides of this ethical dilemma. So it's due in week 7. I'm planning right now, week 8, doing a synchronous session where you can present. I have not gotten the doodle poll out yet. I will get that out today to see when folks are available. I don't like to just assign a time. This is a very small class, so I'm hopeful we can find a time when everybody's available, probably in the evening that week. And you'll just do a brief 5-minute tops presentation, and then we'll hopefully have some Q&A on the topic that you've chosen. So, but this week, all you need to do is jot down a few thoughts. I don't need research. I don't need a paper about it. Just a few sentences about what you think you might want to talk about. And if you dig into it and you find that there's not enough detail for that topic, or you're not finding enough supporting information, then that's fine. Just let me know and we can change your topic. It's not a big deal. But I just want to get you on the right track so that you can get to work on it. To be able to get, not have to scramble at the last minute. So let's go over a few of the questions from last week. So first quiz question, negligence is defined legally as, so our answer was departure from the standard of care. I think that in looking at the answers that other folks chose, some chose harm to the patient, and you may be recalling from our law class, Politics and Policy, where negligence does involve harm, but negligence isn't defined as harm. Negligence is defined as that departure from the standard of care. In order for someone to claim damages in a negligence case, they have to endure some harm. There has to have been harm endured, either by the patient, family, the organization, whatever it happens to be. But it's not necessarily part of negligence. Negligence is that departure from the standard of care. So instead of providing good quality care to somebody, we were negligent in our care, meaning that we provided less care, we provided inappropriate care, etc. So that is negligence, and negligence can lead to medical malpractice, administrative malpractice, political malpractice, whatever it might be. So our answer there is B. Next question. One of the governing body's most important responsibilities is, and really the main responsibility of a governing board for a healthcare organization, be it a board of directors, board of trustees, governing board, whatever it's called, is to select and evaluate the CEO. So the CEO is the boss. You can't see my quote fingers, but is the boss for the organization. The governing board is the boss of the CEO. So they are the ones that monitor the CEO's activities, that would hire the CEO, fire the CEO, etc. The answer that others tended to select was C, select, evaluate the CEO and subordinate managers, and that's not really the case. The governing board has no oversight, specific oversight, over managers beneath the CEO, so like the CFO, CIO, chief nursing officer, etc. They report to the CEO. So the CEO is who has responsibility for them, and the board has responsibility for the CEO. Now the governing board they have fiduciary duty, so they have a duty to oversee the financial to protect the financial situation of the organization. So if they saw that the CFO was, maybe the audit committee saw the CFO was pilfering money, they would oversee that, but by working with the CEO and then perhaps determining that they were somehow involved or whatever. It's still their main task is to select and evaluate the CEO, and everything that goes along with fiduciary duty and the activities of the governing board are really hand in hand with the work of evaluating that CEO and monitoring the activities of the organization. Next one, managers are privy to the organization's information, such as business marketing strategies, decisions about capital equipment, etc. The manager's obligation is to, and our answer is C, maintain the organization's confidence in all business matters. So I'm trying to think of, I think perhaps the E was the one that was chosen most frequently for those that didn't answer C. You always need to maintain confidence in any business matters within an organization. So, you can't share that information with your family. You can't share that information with colleagues that aren't involved. Just like we protect healthcare information, I think the next question's about that. We also need to protect our proprietary business information as well. And if you think about businesses like Apple and Microsoft and and Google and those types of places that have a lot of tech proprietary info, it's not unusual for us to think about, oh, they need to do what they can to protect their proprietary information. It's no different in healthcare. If UPMC has a really savvy marketing person, they're going to do their best to keep those strategies and that information in-house and maintain confidence within the organization for those pieces of information. So business information is really no different than any other type of information. Just the level of legal protection varies a little bit, but it's, from an ethical standpoint, it's important that we maintain confidence in all of that info. This is the last question. So what is the most common breach of HIPAA? So our most common breach is talking about patients with someone that's not involved in the case. That happens constantly when I used to be a privacy officer and I did walk around audits. So I'd throw on a lab coat and walk up and down the halls. I'd get in the elevator with the lab coat on and just constantly hear provider staff, clinical staff talking about patients and talking about patients in a way that I could identify who they were, and I didn't even know, what floor they worked on, but they would mention the patient room number, they'd mention a condition that was, really kind of obvious which patient they were talking about, etc. So that is the most common breach of HIPAA. C and D are both HIPAA breaches as well, but they happen frequently, but not as commonly as just those discussions. So I guess my message there is just remember that anything that you learn about a patient, be it involved in your work with that patient, or if you're an administrative person and you're working on that patient's information for some reason due to finance or billing or coding or quality assurance or whatever it might be, I always talk about wearing a hat. So I have a hat that's my work hat, and all of the information that I learn about patients goes into that hat. And the minute I leave work, I take that hat off, or the minute I go to have a personal conversation with a colleague, I take that hat off. And that was the way I used to train people on HIPAA, and actually it was pretty successful. So just think about it that way. I know that being married to someone that worked in emergency services and in the emergency department for many years, they often have venting sessions, and information about patients will come up. It's not worth it to jeopardize your job to chat about a patient while you're at happy hour or something like that. It's really important that you're not talking about patients in public locations. You never know when a family member or someone that's involved with that patient in some way is standing behind you. So it's just not worth it. Not worth jeopardizing your job, and it's illegal. So we don't want to do it anyway. Okay, so that's all I've got for this week. If you have any questions as you're rolling along, let me know. Like I said, I'll get that doodle poll out to check on week 8. If we find that we can't get a date together, I'll put together a different option. Maybe we can record videos and post them in a discussion board and comment on them that way. So that's all I've got. Everyone have a great week and enjoy the summer. And I'll talk to everyone in the classroom. Thanks.